subscribe.
Hey everybody, we are in Rhode Island, Cranston, Rhode Island. I'm here with Manny. Manny is,
I'm the
put you on the spot.
Put me on the
That's what
spot.
happens when the camera comes out.
So I'm the senior engineering director for JCI's fire suppression business here in Cranston, Rhode Island. So
Awesome.
I run the R&D center here in Cranston and help manage all the activities around the engineering activities supporting our business.
So we were, originally I was kind of led to meet you at AFSA last week. A couple of our colleagues were like, you got to meet Manny, you got to meet Manny. And by the time I got to the booth to meet you, you had already taken off. I think you left a couple hours early at the end of the event. You bailed.
I left early.
Yeah,
Things
you
to
bailed.
do. They keep me busy, so I can't stay too long in one place.
That's fair. That's fair. I think you knew that I was looking for you and you just ducked out. But now I got you wrapped up here for the next.
And glad to have you here.
Yeah, this has been an amazing experience. I was with the Hose Monster guys yesterday and the day before, and it's all JCI today. Tell me a little bit about your involvement with the industry, because you've been at this facility for 26 years. You were telling me earlier. What got you into what you do now?
Yep. So basically, I came to work here because I wanted to work in Rhode Island because I live in Rhode Island.
That makes sense.
I always tell people I was born here, I live here, probably going to die here, and I'm very proud of that. I started my engineering career designing components for nuclear submarines, and then one thing led to another, and I was trying to find a job closer to home. And I got a job here at this Research and Development Center, which at the time was a Grinnell Research and Development Center. And after designing components for nuclear submarines, I said, well, fire sprinklers, how hard could that be? And boy, did I find out how hard that actually was. The fire sprinkler, believe it or not, even though it looks pretty simple, is a pretty complicated device. We ask a sprinkler to do a lot. To sit up there in a ceiling somewhere for many, many years. And then at some point in its lifetime, we ask it to put out a fire. And so designing a product that can sit there for many years and still be as responsive as it is it can be challenging.
When you think of the history that's kind of involved in this area in fire protection, maybe not as long as Frederick Grinnell was in this area, but the station fire, 10, 15 minutes up the street here, I had a chance to go visit the site, the memorial and stuff like that. Very sort of humbling experience to just walk, knowing what happened where you're standing was insane. Right. And for that to happen 15 minutes away from one of the founders of fire sprinkler technology is kind of mind blowing. We have this amazing history here in Rhode Island. We're not really known in Rhode Island. This fire sprinkler industry, this is a small, this is not a large manufacturing facility, although it used to be. When Grinnell started here, this part of Cranston, he essentially owned the whole piece of land here all the way up to the street down the corner. So this was at one point, through the early 1900s till about the 1960s, Grinnell was one of the largest companies in Rhode Island, largest employers in Rhode Island. So it was very, very well known. And then unfortunately, all the manufacturing left over time. And so just left the, essentially the Research and Development Center here. I like to say, like you say, you're not really well known in the area, but sprinkler famous is different than regular famous. To be famous in the sprinkler industry is nobody knows you when you go to the airport. You have no problems traveling, but when you go to conferences and stuff like that, it's, you get known. Deal. It's awesome. But so this facility, like you said, research and development, you've got the Frederick Grinnell Training Center, which is amazing. Where we're standing now is kind of a little special piece of history. You guys have developed a museum of stuff over the years, over 100 years of fire protection development is kind of sitting in this.
This is where it all started, right? When you think about the fire sprinkler industry, it was started as a result of the Industrial Revolution, and the Industrial Revolution in the United States started here in Rhode Island, right? The first mill built in the United States was Slater's Mill in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. If you grew up in Rhode Island, a fifth grader, you went on a field trip to Pawtucket, Rhode Island, and checked out this mill. It was built in 1793.
Holy cow!
And so this is the part of the country that the first mills and factories were built, and this is the part of the country where they burnt down. So that's what generated the need for fire suppression. And through the early 1800s, people were coming up with different ways to, address fires. Perforated pipe was pretty big in the, through most of the 1800s. And then, we get to the latter half of the 1800s, and Henry Parmalee comes along, develops his automatic sprinkler. And Grinnell gets a hold of that. And, next thing you know, this whole new industry is born right here in Rhode Island.
Right. So how Henry Parmalee and Frederick Grinnell, competitors? Because the history of this is kind of, you get a lot of people that think that Frederick Grinnell invented the first fire sprinkler. And I know there's also a Frederick Grinnell, Henry Parmalee person over in Europe that kind of within the same time frame developed the same type of sprinkler. So not same type, but the same idea. Premise behind it. Henry and Frederick, friends?
Yeah, they were business partners, basically. Parmalee owned a piano factory, didn't like the idea of perforated pipe in his factory, thought it caused too much water damage. So he came up with the automatic sprinkler using low temperature solder to activate a sprinkler. And Grinnell at the time was managing the Providence Steam and Gas Company, and they were supplying pipe for perforated pipe for fire sprinkler systems, and thought the Parmalee sprinkler looked pretty interesting, and they came up with a business agreement. And so, the Grinnell's company was the first to actually mass produce the Parmalee sprinkler. And after doing that for several years, and doing some fire testing with it, realized, hey, we need to speed this thing up a little bit. And so Grinnell developed its own sprinkler, which is known as the Grinnell sensitive sprinkler. Sensitive in the fact that it responds faster than what the Parmalee was designed to do.
So essentially, by today's standards, you got your standard response would be the Parmalee, and the quick response would be the Grinnell.
No,
but not even close.
Not even close. No, they're still well in the standard response category.
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, because if you look at the Parmalee sprinkler, right, it was a cap that was soldered, right?
Yeah.
And that cap is contacting water. Right? So anytime you contact water with solder, it's going to take a long time for that solder.
The old Boy Scouts styrofoam cup with water in it thing where you light the cup on fire and it melts down to that water and then doesn't melt.
Exactly.
No water spills.
So Grinnell made but if you let's get for instance, if you look here is a document. And it tells you how many sprinklers were produced and the type of sprinklers, by Grinnell's company.
Wow.
So in 1878, they produced 1,660 Parmalee sprinklers, and you can see the growth of the industry.
Wow.
And then around 1882, you see the Grinnell type of sprinklers. The sensitive sprinkler starts to be.
I got to get a good zoom in on that because I got to read that when I get back. That's really cool.
And then you can see throughout the late 1800s and early 1900s how the quantities continue to expand.
And these numbers, they seem high by not today's standards. Manufacturers are pumping out sprinklers like crazy, but to think from 1878 to 1906, the jump went from 1,660 to 1 million.
Exactly.
That's a fast growth of an industry.
Yeah,
extremely fast.
What's interesting too is we have documents here that talks about how many fires were occurring. They had thousands of fires. There's documents in our museum where they would report each year how many sprinklers were involved in fires in the U.S. And there are thousands of fires.
So they were tracking that even back then.
Even back then they were tracking that.
I didn't realize that they were tracking fire statistics, and essentially the old Sprinkler Saves website, they didn't have the internet back then, but they were kind of creating that information back then.
Yeah, I mean, because they had to convince people
to do it.
Yeah. This was still, NFPA didn't come around until, I think 1896 was the first conference. That developed what ultimately became NFPA.
That was the first oh, okay.
Yeah. I think there's actually, we have documents.
over here.
No, bring your camera down this way.
Yeah.
We have the report, the copy of the report underneath this memo. That is the report from the 1896 meeting that took place, which ultimately became the NFPA.
The start of it.
So the binder that's underneath that letter.
Is this the original or is this a copy?
That's an original copy. That's an original.
Yeah.
Underneath there.
Star Sprinkler Company. Wow. Well, this is 1952.
This is right. This memo, though, is identifying that below is the report of the Committee on Automatic Sprinkler Protection Conference held in New York in 1896.
Wow.
It's found in the archives.
This first sprinkler conference.
Yeah.
1896.
Grinnell was part of that.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so let's just start with the museum tour now. Where the heck do we start? Let's start with the man.
We can start with the Frederick Grinnell himself. You know, he acquired essentially the rights or the controlling interests of the Providence Steam and Gas Company in 1869 when he was 33 years old. He was an engineer by trade. He graduated from Rensselaer Polytech Institute in Troy, New York, I believe. And he was the one, you know, as I said, who had to deal with Henry Parmalee. They were making pipe for steam and water systems throughout with all the mills and factories throughout the United States. And then fire protection, you know, so the need for fire protection, and then started developing, producing the Parmalee sprinkler, and then subsequently designed his own, Grinnell, sensitive sprinkler, which separated the solder from the water, so the sprinkler responded quickly.
So I didn't realize.
And he also developed, the first dry valve, first differential dry pipe valve.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
They had to develop all this new stuff.
Everything they're doing in this industry is a first. That's cool. I didn't realize how early on into the industry he passed away.
Yes. Yeah. He died in 1905. And his brother, his son Russell, took over. And then the name of the company at the time was the General Fire Extinguishing Company.
Okay.
The term general was pretty popular back then when you consolidated companies, General Electric, General Motors. So there was the General Fire Sprinkler Company. It wasn't until the 1940s that they actually renamed the company, or named the company Grinnell Corporation in honor of Frederick Grinnell.
Wow. Not until the 1950s?
40s. 1940s.
Yeah. Right before Russell passed away. Wow.
And this was supposedly, I've been told this is the desk that Frederick used. Yep. He was on one side and his brother was on the other side. So imagine being the CEO of a company and sharing a desk.
With your brother, nonetheless. Just kidding. I love working with my brother.
It'd be cool to work with my brother, but I can't envision the CEO, sitting down, but that's, it's a different time.
Now, when was the last time you opened these drawers? What do you got in these drawers?
I have no idea.
I'm not saying we should.
Seems
yeah.
I don't know what's in these drawers.
Bottle of booze. The bottom drawer.
You never know what was done back.
That's
back
right.
Then. It was
now,
a different time period.
Given the history that's on this desk, have you ever, after hours, sat here and done paperwork yourself?
No, not worthy.
No, you're not worthy.
Not worthy. No one's worthy. And this is one thing you just want to look at. I appreciate the history, right? Like
100%.
Isaac Newton said, right? If I've gone further or seen further, it's only because I stood on the shoulders of those people who came
100%
before me. And when I look at like the patent wall there that we have, the Hall of Fame, I was really lucky to catch a lot of those guys towards the tail end of their work here in Cranston, working for Grinnell and Tyco all those years. And so we built this industry was built by people who had to invent it all to begin with, because nothing came around. And we just keep, and look at where we are. I always tell people, if you look at the first sprinklers, right, they had a brass body, a deflector, a solder element, and use solder, right? And now we look at sprinklers today, right? They have a brass body, they use solder, they have deflectors.
It's the same, but
it's the same technology, but we've advanced it to be able to make it so much more efficient, right? 100%. Who thought of putting these really large, sprinklers on a ceiling? Yeah. The first sprinklers were the half-inch sprinklers, like what we call a 5/6 K-factor sprinkler. And that was the sprinkler, the only sprinkler, until someone said, hey, let's make them a little bit bigger. And then we got to the 8K factor.
Yep.
And that was pretty much it, right? Until all of a sudden the 90s, the 80s rather. And we started to see people, 70s got 11K with a large drop.
Here,
but forever, the first almost 100 years, you had 2 K factors to deal with. And then we said, hey, we can make things bigger and more effective.
Keep in mind that we're at about the halfway point in the industry was when the hydraulic density was invented. Hasudoshi, I've had him on the podcast, which was insane. Talking about the creation of that, the hydraulic density curve for sprinkler design. That up until, I believe that was the 70s, we were pipe schedule.
Pipe schedule, yeah.
1-inch pipe can do this many sprinklers with, the assumption you had this much water at the base of the riser. Right? Sprinkler design is relatively new if you look at the history of sprinkler. Probably about the halfway point is when the hydraulic calculation came through. So what else do we have here on the wall? One
of the cool things that you can see there is that photograph. Yeah. In the center of that photograph, gentleman by the name of Thomas Edison, you might have heard of.
I've heard of him.
And so, if you weren't aware, his first laboratory in New Jersey burned down. It was quite a spectacular event. And so in the early 1900s, Grinnell's engineers were working on developing a glass bulb sprinkler. Up until that time, it was only solder sprinklers. And so Grinnell, we actually have correspondence between Grinnell and Edison's laboratory. Grinnell had reached out to his laboratory for helping to figure out what kind of materials to use, particularly with the fluid. And so we have memos that show you show the communication and the recommendation for the types of fluids. And when Edison built his new lab in Menlo Park, it was outfitted with the Grinnell quartzoid sprinklers. So that's a photograph of Mr. Edison with the Grinnell fitters.
And look at the manpower. Look at that. That's the size of the company that I work with now. Right? That's the size of my family business right now. And that was on one job site.
Yeah. So from a historical standpoint, it's interesting that Grinnell overlapped with Thomas Edison. Obviously the founder of many industries and 1,000 or so patents himself. So that's pretty neat. I mentioned the Parmalee sprinkler. Essentially the salt shaker design. The cap was soldered to the base, and so this was all full with water, so which made it very slow to respond.
Absolutely.
Tyco or JCI, we're now a hodgepodge of sprinkler companies. Right? Tyco started acquiring sprinkler companies in the 1990s. Grinnell became part of Tyco in 1975.
Oh, is that right?
That early?
Yeah.
But it didn't use the Tyco name for till early 2000s. In 92, Tyco acquired Warmold. And then 96 acquired Star Sprinkler, and then 99 Central Sprinkler Company. So we not only trace our roots back to the Grinnell Corporation or the first sprinkler, but I mean Star and Central have been around for a long time and very innovative as well. You look at a company like Central Sprinkler Company, and what they did in the 1990s was completely transformed our industry, right?
Right.
11 K factor sprinklers, 16.8 K factor sprinklers, extended coverage.
Yeah.
So the attic sprinklers. So they looked at opportunities to advance beyond what were the codes. When I started working here, I was told that the central engineering team had a different mindset than the Grinnell team. The Grinnell team would look at NFPA 13, and they say, all right, we need to do things within NFPA 13 because this is what people do. And the central engineer is like, oh no, where the opportunities lie is outside of NFPA 13. So that's where they started to come up with these specific application sprinklers, extra large orifice sprinklers. Completely changed warehouse storage fire protection with the ELO sprinkler. Things that we take for granted now.
That's right. Yeah, things that are off the shelf.
We're just like, oh my God, what is this?
Yeah. So I've got 2 or 3 of these on my house. I love these old sprinkler boxes. You need a handle though. Where's your handle?
I don't know.
I'll have to send you one. We can trade. All right, you send me a Parmalee, and I'll send you the handle.
I think I need a little bit more than a handle.
Oh, come on. Yeah, I shot my shot. Didn't work. Didn't think so.
Here's an example of an old Grinnell dry pipe valve. I'm not sure what year this one is.
The faceplate looks like a Model E, like the Model E2, but it's not. It's a G.
It's a D.
D.
It's a D. It's a 3-inch valve. This is a 3-inch valve.
Yeah.
This was designed by guys who didn't have like computer analysis capabilities. Yeah. So things are pretty beefy. It's like, all right, we got to make something that's going to hold a lot of pressure.
That's right.
Let's say, we'll just make it about 1 inch thick, and that of steel. So you look at the older stuff, and
you think that it's got to be that thick, but realistically, the water pressure back then wasn't what it is now, right? So, you think you need something this big. Fire pumps really, like, based off the age of this valve, fire pumps might have been around, but not our high pressure fire pumps that we see today.
Right. So this is a 1951 valve.
Yeah. Okay.
So it just shows you the, if you look at our modern day 3-inch valve, how we've advanced the technology, even though it does the same thing essentially, right? It's a differential pipe valve. We can take something. Our 3-inch valve, our dry pipe valve, is probably a third of the weight.
For sure. At least, yeah.
And this is an example of an old retard chamber.
Yep.
So they're obviously different shapes and sizes, but very, very similar component, right? Retard chamber, 2-inch
angle valve.
So,
and your gauges have been replaced per NFPA 25 every 5 years, so they're a little worse for wear, but they're not the originals. That's nice. And it's got
this is I don't know how
built into the back,
but that's
70 and 78. That's cool. That's awesome. And then what are we looking at here? This looks like the old Raider Rise devices.
Yes. I tell you the truth, I'm not sure. This is an old system for monitoring the air in a system.
Like a single stage for pre-action or a deluge valve.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Some of the old sprinkler posters. Yep. What's interesting is they used to advertise back in the 1910s, 20s. They used to advertise in what I would call like general publications, like the New Yorker.
Oh, okay.
Every day. No, they weren't just specialized. Like nowadays, we all, except most of the manufacturers or whatever, people in fire protection are advertising trade type magazines, right?
And the podcast.
And the podcast, absolutely. But they would advertise. These were advertisements that they would put into regular everyday magazines, Lifetime, whatever.
Yeah.
Newspapers.
American Magazine. Yeah.
Yeah. So they were creating the industry, and we're trying to get people out get the message to the general public about the benefits of fire sprinklers.
So leading the conversation over to here, this is kind of an amazing, one of many sprinkler displays you guys got here, but it's essentially the Duraspeed frame arms and how it's kind of evolved over the years, right?
Yes. Yeah, so you look at the Duraspeed, right? The first Duraspeed link.
Yep.
This, I think, is an issue B. You can see how the link, the heat had that big heat collector. And then over time, people realized that's really not doing much. And so the elements started changing when we get to the issue C's and issue C type designs of the 1950s and 60s. This Duraspeed link, that soldering mechanism was invented, I think, in the 1930s, and it was produced in one shape or form all the way to about 2000.
Yeah, these sprinklers were available up until I think the 80s.
Actually, these were available. This is the old F950, was available until right around 2000.
Yeah. Wow.
After the around 2000, when Tyco completed the acquisition of Central to go along with Star, we were trying to figure out what do we do with this product line. And we're like General Motors. You have all these brands.
Yep.
And so they decided at one point we were making the same sprinkler under 3 different brands, which is obviously very complicated.
Yep. Product numbers and shipping and stuff like that.
And then we decided, the decision was made to, hey, we're going to have one brand, and they decided to call it Tyco, which is interesting. You have like all these legacy brands, like Central, Grinnell, Star, and
put them all together and make one brand new one.
I was kind of disappointed because I felt like we lost that historical connection. Like, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
But there was reasons for that. Yeah. And so now we have Tyco branded sprinklers, and our product line I can trace like a lot of our sprinklers that were current in our product line. I can tell you which one came from Star, which one came from Central, which one old Grinnell designs and stuff.
The Florida style, that's one that I've got a facility, because we're obviously in Canada. I'm in Canada. I've got one building that has the Florida style with the escutcheons and everything.
Really?
And I tell the guy, like, you got to replace these. And he's like, I like the way those look. I don't want to replace them. And I'll give you one. I'm going to keep 30 of them, but I'll give you one. You can keep one and put it on the shelf yourself. He refuses to change them out. I'm going to have to get the fire marshal involved. That's a good way to get them done.
These, this sprinkler, it's just a Star Model E sprinkler.
The chemical pellets.
And with the pellet that's in the center of the tube there. So the engineer who designed that for Star, he moved on and worked for Central. And if you look at Central's product line, that's a Central model, actually, I think, H sprinkler.
Okay.
But you can see it has essentially the same, that's because the same engineer went from Star to Central.
Yeah. And these are like the warm mold style.
Yes.
Yep. The warm mold
style.
Yep. Yeah. Interesting. It's really, really cool. I've never seen one of these before.
That's a window sprinkler.
Okay.
Actually produced, it's really a window nozzle.
Yep.
For exterior protection.
Yep.
We still produce that.
Same style? Like
that one and this little one as well.
Those are the ones I've seen. I've never seen that style before. Yeah, really, really cool. Awesome. Okay, let's get over here. Let's see some more. What is the oldest? Well, I mean, what the heck is this? What are we looking at here?
Is there a label on it?
That's what I'm looking for.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah. All right.
It's definitely interesting looking.
Success. We stumped Manny.
I mean, the oldest sprinklers we have are the Parmalees.
Yep.
Going back to the 1870s. And the Grinnell sensitive sprinkler.
Which are, we've got the Parmalee, we got 1875. And are these, for the most part, were any of these, well, a lot of these were mass produced. But like when we get into sprinklers like these, were these prototypes?
No, these are actually all sprinklers that were commercialized at one point.
Okay.
Everything you see on our display at some point was a commercialized product for one reason or another. So this is similar to the one that you brought.
Yes. Yep.
The vertical sidewall.
Yeah. Hopefully we can do a spray pad.
And this is well, that's K25. I thought we had an ESFR 1, the one that you had tattooed on your own.
It's right here. Yeah, we got her. Don't worry about it. No, not that one. I don't see it either. I'm sure we'll come across it.
But just it's just interesting to see what the creativity that goes into some of these designs.
Right.
Because at one point, there were, presently we have, in the U.S. essentially 4 sprinkler manufacturers, right?
Right. Yep.
But at one point there were a lot more than that, right? So some of the designs, like this Etsy model, I don't know why someone came up with that design, but that's pretty interesting.
That is cool
design. I don't know what the benefit of accordion shaped frame arms are.
I don't know.
Well, somebody thought, and how that sprays. The other thing too is like we've come so far with how to make the water spray more effectively.
Yep.
Particularly with our frame arm geometries and deflector geometries as well. We asked the sprinklers to do a lot more, like particularly like in the case of residential. That's an electronic sprinkler.
So this
was set up so that when the sprinkler operated, it would set off this alarm.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't an electronically activated sprinkler. It was the opposite.
It was operate the sprinkler and then have it set off an alarm. Oh no, I'm sorry. I take that back. This is a heater. So this is the one. Yeah. So these two are actually like little heaters. Oh. So this was plugged in, and this was actually what tried to create a quick response sprinkler. This is our electronic sprinkler that we personally make. Yep. This was actually a version that could accelerate the operating of a standard response sprinkler into a quick response sprinkler.
So cool. Then there's the Parmalees right there, 1878. And it looks like you got a few extras.
Mm-hmm.
Just kidding. 1878, insane. Like the 1878. That's almost 150. That's almost 150 years old.
Yep.
You guys doing a big shindig for 150th anniversary?
We don't have. I'm not aware of any plans, but
I'll have to get.
You never know.
We'll have to get the ball rolling. I'll have to come back for a big.
big shindig.
Yeah. And then the wall of inventors here.
So when employees here for Johnson Controls, when they achieve their 5th patent, they get inducted into our Inventors Hall of Fame.
Okay.
So I mentioned Frederick Grinnell is up there.
Yep.
And then, like I said, I had the privilege of working with some of the people up there: Mike Fisher,
Yep.
Jim Mayers, James Gollenbo, Don Pounder, Joe Radzic. Those all Roger Wilkins, Carmen Trevone. These are all people, as I mentioned, who've come before me.
Yeah.
I had the pleasure of learning from and working with, and then he continues to build.
This is how many patents you have?
That's how many patent families.
Okay.
That we have. So like a total of patents. So you have more patents off a family. You invent something, you get a patent, and then you can try to get more claims off that patent.
Okay.
So you end up with like multiple patents for a single family.
So you're second to the man himself.
Yep. We got a long way to go. Don't think I'm going to make it though. Get too old.
But there's nobody even close. There's no close second.
Well, hopefully there will be soon.
Well, the technology is always evolving, but that's impressive.
No, but
that's very impressive.
So I've been here a long time. I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of great people. One of the things I would say, like even though I'm on a lot of these patents, almost all of them are collaborative efforts with coworkers. That's to me that's the best part of working here, is that I get to work with so many really good people.
Yep.
And as I mentioned earlier, this simple little device can be very complicated to design.
Yep.
Not just from designing it to operate is one thing. Designing it to meet all of the really interesting agency requirements, the UL, CFM, European, they all have really tough tests to go through.
Okay, I'm trying to be respectful of your time. What else? Here, thank you for showing me the museum. This is awesome, Manny. Awesome.
Sure, my pleasure.
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to recognize in our museum is we have this poster, unfortunately, from the Atlanta Journal that recognizes a tragedy that occurred in a hotel fire.
Yep.
It's really unfortunate that the biggest improvements in our industry happen as a result of tragedies, right? The Coconut Grove in Boston, the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory in New York City, and you mentioned our station fire here in Rhode Island as well. So I think that's something we always have to remember in this industry, why we do what we do, right?
Yep.
First and foremost is protecting people's lives and livelihoods. And
100%.
So when we look at all the things that we've done, we've got to remember that we're doing this really for that purpose.
There's a reason behind what we're
to me,
doing.
and that's like the beauty of this industry.
Yep.
Is that we make such a positive impact on people's lives.
100%.
And it's funny, we protect billions of people right all over the world.
Yep.
And they don't even know.
Exactly. Well, and you can tell people from the industry when you walk into the
they're
building,
we're all looking up, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Whenever I go someplace with my wife, the first thing she say is, "Are we safe?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it goes like even further into that is you get certain people that hotels, they want to be near a stairway exit. Sprinkler buildings, fire alarms. Like you can call these places and ask them, and a lot of probably 10 years ago, the front desk wouldn't be able to answer that question. But a lot of them now, I think that's not a standard question, but few and far between are the conferences at unsprinklered facilities, right? Like you're paying, people are paying attention to that kind of stuff. Where they're staying in hotels, is it sprinklered? Yes, I'm good to go. Right. Looking at the pictures a little bit closer on the websites, right?
Yep. Yeah, so I just want to point that out because
that's an excellent point. Yeah.